Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of VIDS. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we got the opening where we have Rick and Ronald getting rid of Danielle, the car that Danielle and Grace were in, but also getting rid of Cody's truck. Because, like I said, last episode I was like, oh, it seems like he's super dead, but I was like, oh, maybe there's some wiggle room, he'd be in the coma. It's like, nah, the fact is, he's there, Rick's there and everything. It's like, no way he's going to let that slide. So I was like, Cody had to be super dead. Like I said, it just caught me off guard because I'm like, he's all over the promotional material, but, to be fair, you don't get the full context of a lot of stuff. So we probably saw everything that he was in from episode 1. But if you notice, it was saying and Ryan Felipe last episode. Now it's saying special guest star. So it's like, he's going to be in this, but only in flashbacks because Cody's super dead. It's like, Jesus, that, like I said, that ending caught me off guard. So, and the sad thing is, Cassie's kind of got a feeling about it because she actually talked to Denise about it, where she said, like, before her, like, she found out about her husband, she had this sinking feeling, like, it's something in her gut that made her think, and it's like, because it sounds like her husband was in the military, because they're like, she's like, the moment I saw those men in uniforms, well, she said uniform, so it could be like, it didn't necessarily have to mean like he was in the military. That's what I immediately went to, but it could just been like officers coming to respond because like he died. Either he was a cop and died, or it could be that he was or it just could have been like it was an accident and officers were there to tell her about it. But she gets that same feeling about Cody because she immediately already doesn't trust Rick because she's like, yeah, Rick gave her like this creepy feeling. Especially the first thing is, oh wow, you're beautiful. Don't get too many beautiful women here in Montana. And you're black. Not too many black women in Montana. Beautiful black in Montana. What are the odds? And she's like, there's usually an odd for that type. There's odds for that type of thing. He's like, I was like, oh, it's that thing that kind of makes you laugh a little bit. Like, oh, Rick. Oh, if you weren't a killer, I think this. It's that weird thing where you kind of give characters personality, but it's like oh, you were kind of quirky before. Now it's like, oh, you're a quirky killer. And you human traffic women. Cool. So it's that complicated thing when they do that with characters. You're like, why you have to give personality to piece of shit characters? That's the thing. Because we know now Ronald and Rick are pieces of shit. But obviously, like, Cassie he rubs her the wrong way. Because she even brought it up to Denise. Like, I don't trust. She's like, no, what? What are you talking about, Cassie? Rick, he's just harmless. Don't even give out speeding tickets. Like, but he's trying to. Because I was about to say, I was like, you're not going to kill her too. Because it's caused too much of a ruckus already. Because he'd already talked to Ronald about it. It's like, we're supposed to be taking women that people won't miss. The fact is you took two wholesome girls that people are going to miss. If these are people, basically saying like if women, as Jerry kind of puts it, like human services, people in the human services business, sadly don't have people who might, they go missing. Sadly, they're sadly people that can fall in between the cracks. And it's interesting because it almost seems like Ronald thinks they're doing good because it's almost like we're cleaning up the street. We're sending these people off because later on Ronald's like, you'll be able to do what you're doing, but safer. So in his mind, like because even later on, like Rick is like, oh, we'll pray on it. So like, I think, I'm sure he's making some money off of this, but also like either they're coming at this from both a twisted religious standpoint of like, we're cleaning up this world, we're putting these women in a situation where but it's like, you're also got to be making money off of this. So I think Ronald probably thinks they're doing good, whereas Rick is like, we're getting paid and I'm manipulating Ronald because Ronald is easy enough to manipulate because Rick is the one kind of in charge of this operation. Granted, we don't know who else is involved, but for right now, it just seems like it's Ronald and Rick. We'll see whether that changes later on. But getting back to it, like obviously the moment like Rick gets in the car with Cassie, you're like, oh, because he was like, oh, why'd you lock the door? She's like, habit. And it's like, ugh. Because obviously like Rick tried to make it seem like, oh yeah, like I was actually going to go with Cody, but he talked about kind of ignoring the law. And I was like, hey, I'm trying to protect my pension, so I couldn't go with him. It's like, yeah, so you talk about, you're talking about him being a private citizen, kind of going a little rogue, yet you sent him off there alone. And he's like, yeah, it may not be the best decision, but I'm trying to protect my pension. It's like, I guess like it's better for her to think, hey, you're kind of a douchebag who's self-centered, looking after himself, and being like, whatever happened to Cody before Cody, because like we haven't been able to get in contact with them. Have you been in contact with them? A private citizen is kind of going out on his own and you're not even curious, And obviously he talks about, because obviously we know he looked up stuff about Cody, because he must have been planning this ahead of time to know, like, because obviously Cody, he only went after Cody because it was like, you created this situation, Ronald, so I had to clear it up because those 2 girls that went missing, someone came looking. So I kind of had no choice in the matter. Now Cassie's getting involved. He's not trying to kill her, because the more people that disappear, Cody's one thing. Making Cassie disappear too is going to bring up a whole bunch of other questions, so he don't need to be dropping bodies left and right, but he's trying to squirm his way out of this. But him getting in the car makes you a little uncomfortable, because you're like, he could do it again, but you know he's not going to, because that's just going to bring too much attention to them. So, but like I was saying earlier, he looked into Cody, so it's not too surprising he looked into Cassie. But he talks about, because obviously he's bringing up the whole thing about like, oh yeah, I've never had to use my firearm during work, which is ironic considering he shot Cody last episode. But the fact is that he's trying to say, like, when the time comes, you wonder where your handshake and stuff. Like, she's like, no, I'm sure of it because I learned from the academy. He's like, yeah, but you didn't graduate. I'm wondering, her going to the academy, did that have anything to do with her husband? Like, why she didn't, like, finish, or was there, like, the moment that he's like, so why was that? And he doesn't say, she doesn't say anything. So that's why I'm kind of like, maybe there's probably more to that. Which is interesting, because all of them have, like, some cop-related background. Because Cody was with that, so was Jenny, now Cassie. So, I mean, I guess that's why they kind of found their way to each other, because they were all connected, at least, to law enforcement in some shape or form. So, there's all of that. Then you have Jenny learning about, that lady from the restaurant ended up bringing up, like, yeah, like, how long should I be able to, can I, like, report someone missing without them getting incriminated? So obviously it's like, she tells her about Jerry, and obviously she goes to the truck stop. Jenny goes to the truck stop and is able to find out, to see that Jerry was there, but beyond that, obviously, like, Jerry was going from truck to truck, so probably wouldn't never be able to, but it probably will help narrow things down, because you got to find out probably like looking at the camera. I mean, who knows how many of the trucks were in view of the camera, but it's like, you probably have to account for every truck, because obviously they're slowly piecing this together, that there's got to be some long haul truck driver, because obviously Cassie came to that conclusion. And obviously, Cody came to that conclusion because Cassie had come to it. So, Cassie had, that made Rick a little suspicious, because it's like, oh, she wants to go visit those people that, those church people or whatever that Cody was supposedly going to meet with and stuff like that. And obviously Rick's like, oh, we don't know if we'll actually get entry. They might send us away at the front gate or whatever. But obviously, like, Cassie had shown Jenny, like, the thing that had connected, like, all these, like, 500 murdered women, that it was all connected to, like, long haul truck drivers and stuff like that, which is interesting, because obviously, like, it plays into, like, what I pretty much thought, like, because the series, I brought this up last episode, the series of books that this series is based on is called Highways, so I get the feeling like it's probably, like, that's why I'm, like, wondering, is it kind of an anthology of, like, different, like, maybe every book is a highway mystery, and I'm curious, like, is that what that it's kind of connected to, or maybe not, I don't know, or maybe it's the same detectives looking into different highway cases. I don't know what the ones. I've not read the books that these are based on. I just, like I said, was reading that it was based on the book, so that's what I'm curious about. But then you have, like, the scene between Danielle and Grace and Jerry about the whole situation, because obviously it's like, he seemed lonely and they're trying to take advantage of that, which is so interesting, because Grace is the one that's coming up with the plans, because Danielle's a little, she's characterized as kind of a little, ditzy in this situation, which I just also, like, no tact whatsoever, being like, so, question for you, do you have a penis? It's like, Grace is like, shut up, Danielle, like, why would you, like, excuse my sister, but it's like, and, Jerry was like, yeah, I have a penis, but it's also like, I don't, because it's like, she said the human services, and it's like, and it's like, oh, I think, it's like, oh, you get it? Like, Grace had to nod her head to be like, you get, and Daniel's like, oh, okay, I get the human services thing. But it's like, she's like, that's what I do, but I also try to do, be a famous singer, granted, without, the fame part hasn't happened yet. But, obviously, Grace is the one that's kind of concocting a plan, but it's so interesting because she doesn't go along with it a little bit, just because she's, like, the one that's the most fighting. Because it is that creepy thing that Ronald is there, like, it's like, you called me a loser, but you think you can have, just because you have a pretty face and pretty hair. It's like, my mom had me wash my hair, and he's smelling her hair, trying to smell Grace's hair. And And it's like, I'm not an evil person. Tell them that. It's like, right, you're not an evil like, you know, it's like Michelle tell them, and it's like, you're not an evil person. She's like, you can go at, if you're going to be a monster, be, you know, Grace was like, if you're going to be a monster, be an honest monster. Don't try to pretend to be a good, like I said, because in his mind, he actually think he is doing something good. Like, I might be kidnapped, but it's like, I think for him, he's probably never murdered anyone. So in his mind, he probably thinks like, oh, like I said, I think it's just so interesting. I feel bad for the actor who plays Ronald, just because, like I said, he went from playing Gene to this. Who knows if he's done anything in between, but it's just interesting to have a character like Gene and then have this character Ronald, like, you know, back to back, just in certain regards. But nevertheless, but Grace being the one that's fighting back, she headbutts him, like blood from his nose and everything. He wipes it and then wipes it on her face, being like, you know, don't you think I won't kill you? I'll kill you. Because, like, you know, Jerry is trying to protect him by being like, they're good girls. If you want to do whatever you want to, just do it to me. Just leave them alone, you know. But obviously, you know, Rick is like, clean Michelle up and get her shipped out, because like we can at least do something with her. Now with the sisters, we'll have to figure something out, because people are looking for them, so they will, like, Canada's not going to take them, is kind of what, so that's where they're being human trafficked to, or at least that might be like the in-between stop before they get sent off somewhere else. But obviously, you know, they have to, like, it's like, okay, you're trying to play into the psychopathy of it, being like, okay, so the psychological angle to it of like, okay, you know, so we're understanding they're trying to understand his psychopathy. It's like, you know, Jerry brings up the fact that he has mother issues because he brought up his mom, and it's like, okay, so we know he's lonely, we can play into this, like, you know, she's like, he seems shaky and fragile, so it's like, if we play into that, you know, it's like, if, you know, it's like, Daniel, he's kind of taking an interest in you, so maybe if you kind of lean into that, and it's like, we'll kind of create like a girl band, and, you know, Jerry's like, well, psychopaths are kind of connected to like religious stuff, so guys were in a choir, so we sing some stuff like that, maybe we'll sway his emotion. And it did for a second stop him, because listening to them sing, you can tell, because obviously this is connected to like a kind of cult and a church like thing, so I think they kind of play into that. Like I said, that's why I'm like, Rick and Ronald are in this, but who knows how much bigger this is, like that cult or whatever. Like maybe they're connected, or maybe Rick and them are doing their own thing separate, you know. But when it's all said and done, though, he does grab Michelle, and obviously he's telling Michelle to watch, and it's like, she doesn't want to, because she knows what it's going to reveal, but he's like, I'm not going to look. And then she's like, look at me. She was probably hoping that maybe she could change the situation by revealing herself, and he sees it, and he just locks her back up. And she's like, I ruined his plan, and kind of explained that she explained to the others that this is about human trafficking, and by revealing the goods, she ruined his plan. But obviously, like, I like Grace being like, but don't, you know, being here is better than being wherever you're going to be sent. It's like, because you got us, don't forget that. I was like, that's sweet. And, you know, because obviously they're all in this situation together, so we got to help each other out, you know, so. Also, we got a deeper dive into Ronald and his mom. Like, the moment, like, his mom is still chastising him and stuff like that. And then she's like, you're pent up. And then she says, go upstairs and masturbate yourself. I was like, okay. I won't lie to you, at the end, when he was going to his mom's bed, I was like, he's not going to kill her or anything. I was like, he's going to sleep with her, either crawl in bed with her, or he's going to sleep with her. I was like, I was kind of leaning toward, I was thinking like, oh, it's going to be, because you already tell they have a twisted, weird relationship, that it's not a healthy relationship. So her telling him to go upstairs and masturbate to get rid of his pent up, you know, that I'm like, that's what made me think, like, that's why I was leaning to like the second of like them like sleeping together, but he just crawls in bed and huddles up with her. But that's why I'm just like, that's the whole point. Like, I mean, isn't that kind of the thing, like, most people say with like serial killers and like sociopaths or psychopaths, it's like they have mother issues. Like, isn't that kind of like a stereotype? So I mean, we kind of lean into that. So like, maybe that's why he does what he does. Like, that's probably why he doesn't kill women either, but it's like, he, you know, does what he does because he thinks like he's saving these women, and maybe his issues with his mom plays into it. So we'll see kind of how things kind of go on that front. But obviously Cassie went to go visit Rick's wife, and she sadly ends up calling up Rick to let him know that Cassie stopped by. You're like, oh, that's not good. It's like, I'm not calling you for alimony or anything like that, but it's like, okay, so this is what's up. And it's like, oh boy. And so Rick wasn't too happy. Well, for one, now it means like Cassie isn't as off his trail, that Cassie is looking into him. Is like, well, that's becoming more and more of a problem. It's like, well, what do you do about this situation? You already killed one You already killed Cody, so like you can't. Or how are you going to handle this? Because once again, you go about this with Cassie like this, you're just going to end up drawing more attention to yourself. But obviously, like Cassie, like going home and like hugging her son, I'm sure like this whole situation probably makes her think about her husband, but also now the Cody thing. We got a little flashback to that because Jenny had asked, like, because I didn't even talk about this because Jenny was immediately like, well, there's a third option because Cody apparently like had like he might have gone on a bender because it seems like he's an alcoholic, that he has a drinking issue. So that's what she immediately thought. But like then Cassie was like, no, he hasn't drunk in so long. And she's like, whoa, so how intimate were you with my husband for you to be able to say something like that? It's like, is he in love with you? It's like, no. How did he sound when you told him that you were breaking up? She's like, I don't know how he took it, but he didn't seem too happy about it. Like, you know, so I'm wondering, did the breakup happen like before Jenny and him slept together? Was it? I would assume it was beforehand. Maybe not. I don't know. But now that probably makes her feel like, you see the tears kind of in Jenny's eye, it probably make her feel like, oh, so was that what that was about? Was it because that happened because, you know, it's like, you know, because of our situation, but also him and Cassie had broken. Maybe that's, you know, once again, it's sad because he's dead and they'll never get that chance to, like, neither one of them will get the chance to kind of, like, properly deal with that situation. It will always just kind of be, there'll always be a small part of it that will always be unfinished, but obviously both of them care about him deeply, so they have that commonality. But obviously they're, you know, fighting over like the circumstances of, hey, we're still married, might be separated, but we're not done. You know, she wants this relationship to keep going. Cassie thought they were done, that whole thing. So, and obviously, you know, Jenny and Cody's son is asking like, oh, you know, why aren't there more cops involved? It's like, you know, it's like sooner or later the FBI might get involved. And are we going to just wait? And he's like, nope. Jenny's like, nope, because they need us. They're waiting for us. So we need to kind of get on top of this. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see kind of where all of this goes as things get more and, you know, more complicated. Obviously for Rick, and, you know, he's the one kind of got, you know, the eyes on him. So once again, I'm curious what's going to, you know, happen. Like, we only got one side of the conversation. We only, you know, we don't know 100% of what Rick's ex-wife told Cassie about him. Like, you know, it's like, oh, is he honest? Is he kind of trustworthy? And it's like, we don't know what kind of responses she gave. Like, you know, I mean, probably enough. Well, she's on good enough terms with him to call and be like, are you in some kind of trouble? Is this about you? Are we at the strip mall again or something like that? So obviously she doesn't think much of it, but now Rick is like, well, now they're might be looking at me a little suspiciously. Once again, like how he's going to respond to the situation, we'll have to, you know, ultimately wait and see. And what happens with Jerry, Grace, and Danielle, you know, under circumstances, like a thing like, yeah, we got to sit together, but it's like, you know, how do they handle this now that, you know, Jerry's situation is revealed? It's like they can't go off selling her, so that kind of ruins things. So it might be a situation where they might go like, because they can't, because it's going to be too much of an issue, you know. Probably like, because part of them is like, well, we could get rid of Jerry, we can't keep her around. That might be the direction they go, like to kind of keep the others in line. They might get rid of Jerry. I don't know. Like I said, we'll have to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.